Elmo goes insane. Kill James. That's what a talking Elmo doll began to say at random one day in Lithia, Florida. The mother was changing the batteries for her toddler's toy when she noticed that it was saying her son's name and instructing him to die. The Elmo Knows Your Name doll is supposed to plug into the computer, learn your child's name, and say hi. It is definitely not supposed to learn the urge to kill. Fisher-Price manufactures the dolls, and they can offer no explanation as to why this one Elmo doll is bent on wanting to kill James.
Kill James? Kill James?
They asked the family to return the doll so that it can be studied and better understood. By this point, young James had begun to repeat the phrase himself. Apologizing to Australia. Ayers Rock is a famous natural landmark in Australia that brings in 250,000 visitors from across the world each year. It is also home to the native Aboriginal population, otherwise known as Bushmen. Unfortunately, a lot of people want to disrespect the sacred site by taking a piece of rock back home with them. And when I say unfortunately, I mean for the tourists and not for the local tribes. That's because every year, hundreds of apologetic tourists mail their stolen rock fragments back to Australia. As their letters show, a large portion of them say they have been cursed with bad luck ever since they brought the souvenir back. Complaints of family deaths, divorces and illnesses are the top 3 common side effects of removing the rock from their natural habitat. By mailing the rocks back, cursed tourists hope they can reverse the damage that they have so foolishly brought upon themselves. Even though the natives tell them not to take rocks in the first place, tourists have been ignoring them since the 1970s. Some people just have to learn the hard way. Curse of the Irish. Australia is not the only place with cursed rocks. The Blarney Stone in Ireland is known to bring good luck to anyone who kisses it, but this logic does not apply to the rest of the castle. If you want to take a piece of the Blarney Castle home with you, you'll get a curse instead. Much like Ayers Rock, regretful tourists often mail their stolen stone fragments back to Ireland, with letters of apology explaining how they have been cursed. One of these people is Linda Kelly from South Carolina. She explains that she bought a rock from Blarney Castle at a yard sale for $1. Its previous owner was a priest who had died alone and in misery. When she took the rock home, her life changed immediately, and not for the better. First, Kelly felt extremely depressed for no explainable reason at all. She also had employment problems right away, even though she was usually excellent at her job. Soon, she started hanging around the house all the time and could not seem to even move. When she received a huge late notice in the mail for a bill she knew she had already paid, she decided to mail the stolen piece of the Blarney Castle back to Ireland. She started to feel better right away and knew she made the right decision. Otherwise, Kelly was sure that she would have ended up like the unlucky priest before her. The worst phone number in the world. While this one is technically not a physical object, it is still cursed and brings bad luck to all those who come across it. I'm talking about a mobile phone number that is so dangerous, nobody in the world will accept it. That's because every single person who has been given this phone number, 0888 888 888, has died. Vladimir Grashnov was the first to go in 2001. This CEO of a Bulgarian company called Mobitel died of cancer when he was only 48. Next was a Bulgarian crime mafia boss named Konstantin Dimitrov. He was given the cursed number and was killed by a hitman at a restaurant soon after. A cocaine drug lord named Konstantin Dishlev got the number next. He was shot outside of a restaurant immediately after. Police suspended the number for a bit to investigate, but the Bulgarian phone company decided to pull the number for good. It's out of service for everyone's safety. Cursed in China. In 1974, a team of 7 peasant farmers came across a priceless discovery in their small village of Yang. As they were working the earth, one of them spotted a tiny head sticking out of the ground. They could tell the object was extremely old and were afraid to touch it at first, but one of them wanted cigarette money, so he broke a piece of it off to take back to town. That is where their problems began. The farmers told others about what they had found, and soon archaeologists came from all over to dig the relics out. In total, over 8,000 miniature figures were recovered. These figures were made out of a clay-like substance called terracotta. This was a complete replica of the ancient Chinese army, and these figurines had been buried with the first emperor of China to protect him in the afterlife. They were more than 2,000 years old and extremely valuable, but also quite cursed. The 7 peasants who found the terracotta army suffered horribly. Instead of making any money, their farmland was taken from them by the government, and their homes were destroyed to make room for government gift shops and museum exhibits. Some of the peasants died at an early age, and the rest of them now sign books in the museum for next to no pay. Almost all of their village believes that this is payback for disturbing the great emperor's cursed army. The hot seat. Daniel Orty was a 17th century English crook who liked to make counterfeit coins for a dishonest living. His illegal operation was going well until his partner in crime, a man by the name of Thomas Busby, fell in love with his beautiful daughter, Elizabeth. This caused a rift to form between the two men, and in 1702, Thomas beat Daniel to death with the very same hammer that Daniel used to forge fake coins. Thomas was sentenced to death for his crime. On his way to be hung, he asked to stop at the local pub for a drink. While sitting in his favorite chair, Thomas announces that this seat is officially cursed, and anyone who sits in it from this day forward will die most unpleasantly. People might have laughed it off at the time, but it seems that Thomas was not playing around. Local townsfolk say that Thomas's curse has claimed the lives of 63 people since then, but only a small portion of them have been officially documented. In 1967, 2 pilots from the Royal Air Force each sat in the chair. They both died in a fatal car crash that same night. Years later, a brave Mason decided to tempt fate and take a seat, and he too fell to his death that very afternoon. Other instances include a roofer who had a roof collapse from under him, a cleaning lady who soon died of a mysterious brain tumor, and a delivery man who died in a car crash just within 1 hour of sitting in the cursed chair. The chair is now suspended high up on a wall in a museum, just so nobody sits on Thomas's favorite chair and activates Thomas's favorite curse. The Little Bastard. James Dean was a 1950s actor who was basically seen by many as the coolest person on earth at the time. His favorite car, however, is almost equally as famous as he was, but for completely different reasons. James Dean's super Porsche 5050 Spider was nicknamed Little Bastard because it looked like one mean car on the road. But even when it was off the road, it was still in trouble. When James Dean had the car in the shop to get it upgraded, for example, the car jumped off the trailer and broke the mechanic's leg. One day, Alec Guinness, who is the same guy that played Obi-Wan in the Star Wars movies, was hanging out with James Dean. He told Dean that he would be dead in that car within a week, and sure enough, Dean wrecked 7 days later in a fatal accident. But his car wasn't through with humanity yet. The same mechanic who had his leg crushed later sold some of the parts from James Dean's car. He sold the engine and drivetrain to 2 race car drivers, and they each had 2 separate accidents in the same race. One overturned their vehicle and seriously injured himself. The other hit a tree and died. Both of Little Bastard's tires were sold too, and they both blew out at the exact same time, nearly costing the driver their life. Then, thieves broke into the mechanic's garage one day to try and steal car parts. When they came across Dean's car, they both seriously injured themselves. One managed to rip their arm wide open. No hope for you. The Hope Diamond is a huge 44-carat gemstone that was found in a 17th century mineshaft in India. According to the legend, it was stolen from a group of priests who went on to put a curse on it to get their revenge. Ever since then, anyone who possesses the diamond, from historic figures of royalty to simple mailmen, have experienced great misfortune. King Louis XIV bought the gemstone and soon died of gangrene. All of his biological children also died except for one. One of his assistants wore the Hope Diamond for a special event. A little while later, this assistant was exiled from the country. Louis XVI was given the Hope Diamond and he supposedly let his wife wear it. She was the Queen of France, Marie Antoinette, who would later have her head chopped off during the French Revolution. The list of people who died or were injured while owning the Hope Diamond goes on and on. A Dutch jeweler was killed by his son. A Greek dealer drove off a cliff and killed himself and his entire family. A rich woman had her entire family die off one by one, and even the poor delivery man wasn't spared. In 1958, James Todd dropped the Hope Diamond off at the Smithsonian Museum. By 1959, he had gotten into 2 different car accidents. One crushed his leg, and the other gave him a head injury. His wife died, his dog died, and half his house burned down.